Hello, everybody. Welcome to Untether.tv, where we have casual conversations with mobile rock stars. This is another one of those series that I'm working on, which is the impact that mobile is going to have on certain segments of our economy, certain segments of our lives. And I've got with me Greg Hammermaster, who is the president of Sage Payment Solutions. And we're going to be talking about the impact that mobile and mobile payments are going to have on cash. Is this really the beginning of the e-wallet, the cashless society? I'm from Canada. I carry a debit card. I don't carry cash anymore, but I'd rather just carry it all in one device and be able to pay with everything. Are we heading down that road? Are we going to lose the dollar bills and the coins in our pocket as a result of carrying smartphones and feature phones in our breast pocket? We're going to try to attack some of those questions. Greg, really appreciate you coming on. It looks like actually that there's no snow on the ground. There's a little. I don't think there are any leaves either, but it looks like you are enjoying a little bit of warmer temperatures than I am where I'm from.
Yeah, we're barren out here. There's no leaves, there's no foliage, but it's still chilly out here. Maybe not as chilly as it is where you are, but for a guy like me that spent a lot of time in Florida, this is pretty chilly.
This is pretty chilly. Well, come on up. More than welcome to come and share my igloo right now. So, Greg, thanks for coming on and imparting some of the knowledge that you've got. And you've received, obviously, we'll get into your history, but seasoned guy when it comes to payments and payments and technology. So, really excited to have you on and sharing your knowledge in this space.
Well, it's great to be here.
So, why don't we start with for people who don't know anything about Sage Payment Solutions? Why don't you give us a brief overview of what Sage is? And I know it's a smaller piece of a larger company, right? So, why don't you just give us a little overview?
Yeah, in North America, Sage is kind of a well-kept secret. Unfortunately, we are a large business software company. A lot of brand names people would know would be Peachtree and Act and Sales Logics. If you follow the ERP space, which is short for Enterprise Resource Planning, which is full-fledged accounting type systems, it's MAS 9200 and MAS 500, ACPAC, X3. So a lot of strong brands in the business software world. And what I do is I run the payments division of Sage, and where we focus on is integrating the payments experience and the payments data within the accounting and ERP type solutions. And we also run a standalone business here where we work with customers who may not be using Sage software, but using other type software solutions. We also provide payment processing solutions for them as well. So that's Sage Payments within a nutshell.
And so, I'm really interested in what you guys are doing when it comes to the mobile side. You said that you're launching a product, soon to launch a product in the mobile space, leveraging all that knowledge that you've received from the years of doing this in other space. Why don't you just give us an overview of what that's going to look like in the next little while?
Yeah, that's great. We call it Sage Mobile Payments. We're launching very quickly, and what it is, and as I talked about before, the heritage of Sage Payments is really as a sister company within the Sage business software world. And what's really important to us and what is important to our customers is that you have an integrated payments experience. And so the way that we look at the world is not necessarily as mobile payments as a standalone or a credit card terminal for that matter as a standalone. We're trying to help our customers. They always tend to have three objectives that are consistent no matter what period of time it is, what survey that's happening. They all want to reduce costs. They all want to increase the visibility across their enterprise of their payments and other types of solutions. And they want to improve their revenues. And so we look at integrated data as being very important. We know that when customers process a payment, they want that payment data to flow into the accounting system. And so having a mobile payment device or mobile payment solution fits right into that whole criteria. We don't look at mobile payments as being a standalone offering. We think mobile payments is a part of the overall business environment. And as customers are mobile and businesses are mobile, their payment device needs to be mobile with them.
It's funny because touch on it quickly now, and then we'll come back to it. Is that I think that a lot of people look at mobile payments as a new business, and mobile as a new business. And there are some new business models that have come as a result of mobile. But really, it's about extending whatever you're doing onto that platform. So it's a convenience factor for your end customers. Is that really that's where what you guys bring is ultimately, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I tend to always say, mobile is about it's not about a device. Mobile is about the environment. It's about where you are. And if you think about it, the ultimate mobile payment solution out there happens to be a credit card or a debit card. It's what goes in your wallet. It follows you wherever you go. That's a mobile solution. And so what we try to do is we look at mobile as a part of the ecosystem that a corporation resides in. And just because they're at an arts and crafts fair, or they're at a trade show, or they're somewhere, if you're a technician, you're on site implementing a solution, just because you're mobile doesn't mean you shouldn't be have the capability to close a sale, to have access into the integrated environment, and make it more of a manual transaction. So we tend to think of mobile as very important as a part of the integrated payment experience.
Well, and we'll come back because I'll get into a much broader conversation about where we were, where we are, and where we're going to be when it comes to mobile payment and cash, and what the impact of that is going to be. But I'd be remiss to highlight some of the things that you've done in your career in order to be able to get you to this point, because I read Dee Hock's book about Visa. A massive fan of the way that he wrote that and the concepts in that book. But you're a Visa guy. You worked for Visa for a number of years, and then a couple of other companies. Why don't you talk about your history?
Yeah, it's really kind of funny. I tend to always say, a lot of it's just dumb luck, being in the right place at the right time sometimes, where my payments experience really started in a bank in the Midwest. It was called First Bank Systems back then. It's been acquired since then. But First Bank got the license, if you will, to really create the first commercial Visa card. And this is back in 1989 timeframe. And back then, only American Express and Diners Club were really the only commercial card products. Visa, MasterCard were strictly consumer cards. Yep. And so, we got into that whole space, and we were just blown away by doing everything wrong. It's amazing how much flexibility we got. We did so much wrong, but we still grew the business substantially because of the acceptance of the Visa brand.
Right.
And after doing that for about 4 or 5 years, and we kind of grew that thing from 0 to 5 billion in volume very quickly, I jumped over to Visa. And a funny story: Dee Hock and I share the same hometown. We're both from Seattle. So I don't know Dee that well, but I joined Visa in the 1995 timeframe, and really what I focused on there was the commercial side of payments.
Right.
A lot of best practices studies, some of it on data integration, which kind of got my affiliation or affinity towards wanting to see the integrated payments environment. And I worked with a lot of banks to coach them into the commercial payments, especially commercial credit card world. And kind of help create that environment a little bit further and beyond what I did within the bank. So that's kind of my background, starting in payments, going to Visa, and then really after Visa, a lot of .com, a lot of web-based solutions, mainly business to business, and then redid it again at SunTrust Bank out in the southeast area of the U.S. Restarted another commercial card program and had a good run there as well. So
when you look back at it, was Sage the logical place for you to end up because of the integration of all of these, your deep understanding of exactly what the business needed in order to be able to facilitate these kind of transactions through credit cards or through any other kind of mobile payment or any kind of payment system? It seemed like a logical step.
The constant with every stop I've had, the constant has always been the anchor of the customer. The anchor of the customer is their business software environment. It's what they invest in. It's what they build out, their enterprise resource planning or ERP system.
Yep.
And so, as you're developing, and I call that, that's mission critical. The mission critical part of the company is their operating environment. It is their ERP. Business critical is their payments environment. So you want the payment solution, which is business critical, to integrate into the mission critical ERP system. That was the constant at every stop I've ever had, was that core value of data integration and payments data integration into the ERP. And so, that's what made sense to me with Sage. When I looked at this opportunity in this situation, it was really ripe to take the value add of payments integration into the ERP environment and down to the small, mid-sized business marketplace, the SMB or SME, however you want to say it, marketplace, is something that does tend to get overlooked.
Yes.
Fortune 500 market, Fortune 100 market, you see a lot of customization being done when it comes to payments integration. In the smaller market, we don't see it. So really the dream I had was finding a way to take payments into kind of packaging, if you will, and have it have this integrated feel in more of a bundled or packaged approach.
See, so you hit on something really clear there, is that, we talk a lot about the impact that SMEs and SMBs are having on the economy. But what ends up happening is those are also the guys that are innovating when it comes to the unique ways of processing credit cards or accepting payments. I even look at something as simple as the web world has taught us that it's okay to ask for payment up front, which is one of these great things that I love. Is that there's a balance online about people who are when I pay for something online, I pay for it with a credit card. I in order to be able to collect whatever it is that I bought, whether it's a service or a consulting gig, it's facilitating it. It's removing the friction from that kind of transaction. And what I've been waiting for is that kind of seamlessness right across the board into the real world, which is, when a plumber comes to my house and fixes something, he doesn't leave me with a bill, because that's paperwork. What he does is he swipes my credit card, and then we're on our way. Or I scan my phone, or I hand him my debit card. I suppose you could write him a check, but a lot of people don't. This is really that, reducing all the friction in commerce, and then also reducing all the paperwork that's associated with that, automating that whole process, and everybody at the end of the day, the work's done, payment's complete. And that's really what's happening in the SME and the small, medium-sized companies. I just think that cash is so important to those guys, and the faster that it gets into their bank account, the better, isn't it?
Absolutely. Cash management is really core, and it's about getting paid faster. It's about being able to know where your receivables are, so that as you have to make your payables. So you want to see where your cash is coming in and where your cash is going out, having complete visibility and timing around that. And again, the beauty about the mobile payment solution, I think you hit it very well. You can think of so many different roles in businesses today, where it's not just the ability to go out there and the plumber or the technician on site to be able to facilitate the payment at that point in time. And in most situations like that, they could send a bill, they could invoice it, they could get paid 35, 45 days later, or maybe 60 days later. Yeah, they lose some float, but they still got the sale. But that's the part that I always want to talk about as well, is the fact that if you can accept payment on the fly like that, you might close more sales. Yeah. So it's not just about getting cash faster; it's about getting cash. Yeah. And there are a lot of professions where if you have the capability to take the credit card right then and there, you will close that sale. And worst case scenario, as you pointed out, you'll get paid faster, and that's critical for a lot of SMBs these days. Liquidity is one of their core focuses.
Well, we've seen that, anytime you can speed that up, that whole process up, which is a big problem. And I think over the last couple of years during this recession that, North America and the rest of the world seems to be in, I don't think that business has been lost. I think that everybody's a little bit more conservative in their spending. But what has happened considerably is the collection periods have gone from 30 to 45 to 60 to 90 days. And, in my last company, a lot of vendors that we were dealing with said, our new payment terms are 90 days.
Yeah,
and that has a pretty significant impact. So anytime you can bring the transaction closer to the actual day of work, and I think that's the promise of mobile. And I think that I have this great vision of lemonade stands where they can accept payment with your cell phone. Yeah. So the 5-year-old outside, and when that happens, that you've got this frictionless world of transactions where it doesn't matter. Oh, you don't have a nickel, buddy? You got a cell phone. Pay up, right?
Pay up, yeah.
It's like,
well, actually, I gave my cell phone to my daughter the other day, and she was babysitting, and she took a credit card as a form of payment. It was a neighbor, and everybody knows I'm a credit card fanatic, and everybody knows I'm in the industry. So I even practice it here locally. In fact, I'll give you a quick shot if you want to see it. Let me see if I can get on here real quick. But it's just it's this type of device. I'm not sure if you can see it perfectly, but you hit credit card sale, you hit select. Put your money in right there. I'll put in $3 just because, let's put in 30 this time, huh? Put in 30, hit next. And then what you can do is, if you see right here, the little thing called swipe.
Yep.
So you put your
Is that your own system on
swipe,
top?
Yeah, you swipe the card, and that will then pre-populate. Or if you want, you can key it in as well. But it's a great device that works incredibly well for businesses and for babysitters.
Yeah. Businesses and babysitters. Yeah. That is incredible.
And maybe for my son, if he wants to mow a lawn, it could work for him as well. So, yeah.
you just see that, and I want to talk about this because when you think about the future, it really is about this. Is that cash is not an effective cash itself is not an effective tool for exchange, right? I mean, it's costly, it's cumbersome, you lose it, it rips. The Treasury has to keep printing bills, and ultimately, it's just not an effective mechanism, and it's not convenient, really. If you think about way back in the day, and let's start this conversation a little deeper. Way back in the day, where banks, you had to go to a bank in their banking hours and take out as much money as you needed on a Friday afternoon to last you the weekend, or else you were kind of out of cash until Monday morning. Right? Yeah. And that's in my lifetime. That's in our lifetime. That was a few short years ago when there wasn't a bank machine. You didn't have debit cards, and certainly in Canada, we've come so far that I'd say that the adoption of debit. The debit system in Canada has been so widespread.
Yeah, it has.
And that people like me don't carry cash. We just carry our debit cards. And it always surprises me when I go into a place, sometimes in Canada, but mostly in the States, where they never accepted debit cards for so long.
Yeah.
But we've evolved so far, haven't we, in such a short period of time? And you were sitting at the forefront of this with Visa and the other companies.
Yeah, it is amazing. I was telling this to I was giving a presentation at a user conference last month, and I was going back to my college days. And I went to a college that was on the border between the state of Washington and the state of Idaho. Yeah. And of course, being kids, it's very common that you would go to Idaho to go to some of the restaurants, we might call them, and maybe some bars, a few. But very common as a kid, you didn't have money. And this is before credit cards were really prevalent and were not being marketed to college kids, and college kids could not get a credit card really in those days. And so you had cash. And now we had our checkbooks, but if you're from the state of Washington and you go to Idaho and your check is in like 103 or 105 series, you're not going to get that check cashed. So I kind of go back to that, and that's why I always talk about the original mobile payment. Well, you can say cash was the original mobile payment, but let's take it one grade further, or one generation further, and say that really the credit card in your wallet following you now became that liberator to make you mobile, so that you could, if you're the state of Washington, you could go to the state of Idaho and you could use your credit card effectively if you didn't have cash. So I think that's an incredible thought process, and I'm a significant fan of the credit card networks, and whether it be the debit cards to the credit cards and the commercial cards, the value that's offered here is really quite substantial. And when you think about the fact that you can be mobile and you can make payments, you can accept payments, and there's a trillion cards out there in circulation. If you're a business and you can have a trillion cards capable of transacting with you at any point in time, you don't have to underwrite them, you don't have to bill them, you don't have to collect on them. This is instant cash that's settled next day for the most part. That's a heck of a value proposition to a business. So I tend to think that right now, especially in the politically charged environment, we are seeing a little bit of a backlash on the debit card and now the credit card to a certain degree. But for a fee of 2%, to have access to a trillion cards and not have to go through underwriting and that type of risk and the overhead that you have just to operate an environment that sends out bills, does postage, and then receives checks, processes checks, and then does chargebacks, underwriting, all that kind of fun stuff. I think the credit card is a heck of a solution for a lot of businesses if they want to be on the web, if they want to be over the phone, if they want to really close sales in very many channels. It's a heck of a solution.
And it really is. I spent quite a bit of time abroad traveling in my younger days, and I'll take you back to 1992, 1993, and I traveled with traveler's checks and an American Express card.
Yeah.
Right, because it was accepted at so many locations, and that was my crutch. I had to have the cash out front, and I carried a stack. I was gone for quite a bit of time traveling through Southeast Asia, and I carried a stack of American Express traveler's checks. Yeah. And to do that today seems incredible. I mean, there was a whole process around if you lost them, if they were stolen, and I remember thinking that there's got to be a better way for this. This is even before email was common in most places, but go from there to today. And there were places where I was stuck on an island in Thailand, and they didn't accept an American Express. They didn't accept anything but cash. I couldn't cash a travel check, and I couldn't use an American Express card.
Yeah.
But so today, you know, we've gone through this hurdle. We got a massive system. The plumbing is there for this, and I think that obviously the adoption of credit cards. Some people say over adoption of credit cards as a mobile payment. It's not a convenience payment. It's more like a loan for some people at this point. But all of that infrastructure is in play. Now it's about extending that to wherever people are, and you know, that's why I'm a big fan of PayPal.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that, you know what, I can now pay with my debit card. I can actually get a PayPal debit card. If you pay me and I don't want to transfer it and absorb the fees into my bank account, I can just pay with a debit card or a credit card that's tied directly to my PayPal account. You know, it just seems like everybody's moving along this continuum of facilitating the transaction, making sure it's easy to do, making sure it's available everywhere. And, you know, at some point it stopped at the store, right? It stopped at the restaurant. And what you just demonstrated, and what companies like, you know, all around, like Square and a bunch of these other transaction companies are demonstrating, that you can be walking down the street and sell your jacket and accept a credit card.
Yeah.
Or a company like Bump and PayPal, where you could just sell your jacket and bump devices and transfer the cash over, right? Or settle debts right where they are. You know, bets. You know, yesterday was playoff day in the NFL, and you can pay your buddy right from there. So what impact does this have? Because it just seems like it's accelerating at such a rate.
Yeah.
That is this short term that we're going to walk away from cash? Is this long term? And what about the people who the folks who are using normal phones, not feature phone, or not smartphones, and leaving them left behind? It's a big, wide-ranging conversation. Let's just talk about what's going on today.
Yeah, you know what's? Excuse me, what this phone?
It's okay.
Big conference going on.
You're working? Yeah. Okay. You're working. I know that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know what's interesting to me is that we do find that a lot of times to get critical mass, and granted, let me take a step back. The payments are always region by region.
Yeah.
You know, we found the proliferation of smartphones much more so overseas than we have especially in the U.S. market, and to a certain degree Canada as well. Let's say North America. And we've also seen the proliferation of smartphones having payment capability overseas much quicker than we have here.
Yes.
Well, that's largely because of the infrastructure. You know, we have a very cost-free, I should say cost-free, but efficient telecommunication infrastructure here in the United States and Canada. And that's not necessarily the case in some third world countries. Much easier and more capable of having a smart chip or having a cell phone infrastructure that's a little bit more cost-effective. And that then produces commerce, you know, when you have that type of infrastructure play. The second thing, though, that I think is more important in the U.S. market is about the commercial application of the device. And, you know, PayPal is a very good example. It's done very well in the consumer market, but I don't think it's been, you know, as strong in the business or commercial market with, you know, the core solution that first came out. It's had to kind of, you know, evolve itself to have some commercial application. And especially in the United States and Canada, I think that before you do get critical mass, businesses really have to adopt it or accept it as I think a preferred way of transacting. Yeah. And you know, the part that we always tend to look at here most often in North America is around the security aspect of things. And I think, you know, the place where mobile really has to now kind of focus on to get critical mass and acceptance within the North American market is going to be ensuring that this is an end-to-end encrypted device. And what I mean by that is the software along with the hardware together, when those are encrypted, you have now a chance to have a much more secure transaction where we are now seeing, for example, viruses being introduced into smartphones and cell phones, and those viruses have the chance to be able to sniff out a credit card number and instantly you know, transmit that number overseas. So security plays a huge part in the commercial market, and I think we're seeing an evolution now with our mobile phone devices, putting in NFC type chips, which stands for near field communication. We're seeing the end-to-end encryption, but we're on the leading edge of that right now. So we still got a little bit of time to see how that plays out. Now, you'd asked another good question I thought about, cell phones. It's important that, again, when I say, mobile should not be about a device. Mobile's about a method. And mobile's not about just having an iPhone or just an Android-type phone. A lot of businesses that have technicians or plumbers, whatever it might be, they're out in the field, they don't want to have to say, well, get rid of your flip phone and get rid of your Motorola. They're going to say, look, we can't deploy 1,000 new iPhones or Android devices. So having capabilities on existing hardware and infrastructure becomes very important as well. So it's not just smartphones, but it's going to have to be cell phones for a period of time to really kickstart and have mobile be a serious solution within the North American environment. Now, I think we all know it's going to ultimately get there regardless. But if we're going to look for quicker adoption in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll have to see that graduation of security and then capability across all types of hardware sets, and then ultimately we'll find, I think, mass market adoption, within at least 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because if you look at the evolution of a credit card and not just the concept of the credit card, because the concept is easy to grasp.
Yeah.
But what they've done is they've set everybody's mind at ease, right? So there's protection on every purchase, right? They have so many mechanisms and hooks in place that say, if there's any oddity in the way that you're using the credit card, they're going to call you right away. I mean, they have these flags in there based on your personal profile, so that they can that whole infrastructure. I mean, I made a call on my credit card from Montreal once, and it took them 9 minutes to call me. To say at home, I wasn't there obviously, to say, hey, there's we're worried about somebody might be using your credit card because you normally don't use it on the, to pay for phone calls, that kind of stuff. Yep. So you've got this massive infrastructure, and then you've got the card itself, which is, every iteration of a credit card becomes more and more tamper-proof, right? So that they, certainly around, now everything has a pin associated with it, but there's, the hologram on it, or the holograph on it, the security mechanisms on the card itself, and they were talking at some point about biometric activation, right, where you scan your thumb on it, and then so that's kind of gone down a path, and then all of a sudden the smartphone comes along, right? Over the last number of years, these have picked up, and you must have looked at this and said, okay, well, this could be the ultimate wallet. You could not ever own a credit card, but you just have some, early public key encryption. You just have something that connects this to a POS that allows you to facilitate a transaction based on who you are, because this identifies who you are. And even, so let's talk about that for a second. Is it the thinking of the credit card companies now that might slow this down because of all the effort they put into actually credit cards? As opposed to now, there's no such thing as a credit card. There's just a phone. And are they moving in that direction, or is it something that they're going to be struggling with? Just in your opinion, do you know?
Yeah, in my opinion, I think the credit card companies, as they are today, are adapting quite well, and I think will continue to be a viable player in the mobile space. And I think we because plastic's been around for so long now, and it was in our lifetime. I'm not sure how old you are, but definitely in my lifetime.
Yeah, I remember. Yep.
That it was a cardboard. It was a cardboard account number or name that you had, and when you used that piece of cardboard as a credit card, somebody would have to get on the phone and call up to make sure you were a good person. Yeah. And then what came out was the magnetic stripe on the back of the plastic, and that magnetic stripe made the transaction electronic. Yep. And we don't tend to think of credit cards as being electronic, but it's an electronic transaction because we tend to think of credit cards as being a piece of plastic we carry on us. It's physical, it's manual, but it's the ultimate electronic transaction that's there. Now, there's no reason why the plastic needs to be there. The plastic can go away. It's only there right now for the most part because it has a magnetic stripe on it. It's a good material for a magnetic stripe to be affixed to. But take away the plastic, take away the magnetic stripe, put it into the mobile solution, and there's no reason why the payment networks will not continue on the mobile phone network. Now, I think we're definitely at the same time going to see potentially new payment networks coming into play. And there are some that are being talked about now from the cell phone providers, along with banks and consortiums, and I expect to see a lot more competition within the payment network. We won't see the duopoly that we tend to see now with Visa, MasterCard, and to a certain degree American Express, but really Visa, MasterCard much more on the consumer front, and now even much more on the business front as far as global acceptance. I think we'll start seeing other forms of payment, but will they come into play in the next 3 to 5 years? I think that's a challenge. The infrastructure and the operating regulations, which is kind of what you hit on before, we have a sense of security and a sense of knowledge. We know what to expect when we take out our MasterCard, our Visa, our American Express, our Diners Club, because there's operating regulations that both the card issuer, that's the bank that issues the plastic, and then on the merchant side that accepts the plastic, we know that they have rules and regulations they have to abide by.
Yes.
So we have a very predictable environment. We know what our rights are, and we're very addicted to having those rights. Will other payment networks offer the same type of regulations? They're going to have to, and if they do, can they beat the 2% that it costs right now to take a Visa, MasterCard, and a little bit more for American Express? And I think that's a challenge. I think the value, when it's all said and done, that we are seeing with the payment networks on the credit card networks is very solid. And competition is good. It will make them a little bit more competitive, hopefully. But at the same time, I think it's going to prove out that those payment networks can be integrated within very PDAs and smartphones and cell phones, just as they are integrated right now on pieces of plastic.
I 100% agree, and I think the other piece to this equation is that is the human element to this, which is you could throw all the technology into somebody's hands. You can throw you can facilitate transactions from a smartphone or a feature phone, or from your finger. A little embedded chip called the Midas Touch that you just swipe and it uses your DNA and it debits your account. You can throw all that in, but it comes down to the human factor, which is adoption of something like this is entirely up to the individual. And if the individual isn't willing to do it, isn't willing to change the way they transact or do business, then that's where things will stall or slow down. And I think that, I'm pretty sure that the credit cards could go completely without plastic today, credit card companies, but they would never do that because the human factor. You think that plays into it?
Oh, hugely, hugely. And we just look at the check. Look at the paper check. It still is the #1 form of payment in the business-to-business environment.
It's crazy.
So it is, and I think there's a huge human element. There's a huge behavioral element. That's the fact that if I'm going to pay by check, I can have that check requisition sitting in my inbox on my desk. And I can sit there and stare at it, and that's control.
It is. Yeah. Do I sign it or not? Right?
Yeah, if I sign that check requisition, I process it then through the accounts payable side, then they'll go ahead and remit the check. I know I got 7 days until that thing's going to be there, and so there are careers that people have had based on that type of float and that type of mentality. So we're getting beyond that, and the cost element, the operational cost element of what I just talked about is huge.
Staggering.
It costs so much money to process that way. Yet the human behavioral element of that is still something that will be challenged to break. And we have effectively seen Visa, MasterCard, American Express into the accounts payable cycle. We've now are seeing ACH, electronic bank-to-bank type transactions, just massive increase in popularity and use in the business-to-business world. Checks are going the wrong way, but they're still #1. So a lot of that has to do with human behavior and what you're used to doing. So it'd be interesting to see how long it takes for us to get to, getting rid of plastic and going into mobile devices. And I think we'll see a hybrid. You're going to see people carrying plastic in their wallets. It'll be linked to their cell phone. They'll have very specific uses to when their cell phone will work, whether it's at a Coca-Cola machine where you tap it or you put in a telephone number, excuse me, where that works. And then you go and use your credit card at the next transaction. They'll both sync into one account, or you can have purses and things like that. That's out there today.
Yeah.
But that's, I think, where we're going to in the short period of time as we merge these two together.
Yeah, certainly evolution happens. I spoke with a great company called Tabbed Out that is trying to attack this process about paying your bar bill or your restaurant bill without having to wait for a waiter to come in, and their software just attaches right to the point of sale system. And you know, it's funny, the concept of handing over a credit card to somebody and then having them walk away with it and do whatever they need to do with it and then bring it back, I think we take that for granted, but that's a huge sign of trust that you have in that person. It's not the system now; it's that person. So these guys are building a POS integration, a piece of software for the iPhone that allows you basically to log into the point of sale, pay your bill just by sending a PIN and matching the PIN number and you know, exacting a transaction and walking out. I think that's great, but there's going to be a lot of people being chased down because they think that they haven't paid their bill yet. Hey, you! Yeah.
That's a good thought. You know, I'm seeing a lot now, and I've seen a few studies on it. But, you know, if you go to the Apple Store, you know, they're very famous for the iPhones are in everyone's hand, and you can actually put a little card swiper reader on your audio device, plug it in, and anybody can check out a customer right then and there. I think we're going to see more of this, whether it's the long line in Starbucks where you have a person, you know, going to the midpoint and taking orders with an iPhone right then and there. During the holiday or Christmas rush at some of these other stores, I think what we'll start seeing this next holiday season are people who are hired, you know, working for that store to go into the middle of the line and start taking orders with their cell phone and their smartphones. And so that will be a really good, I think, first indication to a lot of mass market consumers, the effectiveness of the mobile phone, smartphone, really as a payment device.
And cheap to implement and inexpensive to implement, which is the key thing that comes from this. And instead of bringing me a sample of your mint chocolate pumpkin latte, take my order. Yes. Give me what I want and let me pay and let me get out of here, right? Interesting thing
and you hit a great point, and that is, you know, a couple of years ago, you would have had to equip everyone with a dedicated mobile credit card terminal, which, you know, arguably is a much better user experience. When you have a dedicated credit card terminal, you know, that could be mobile or cellular, it's something that is made to take a credit card, and it's much easier to do. It's much more fluid, but it's a big bulky thing. And it costs a few $100, probably $400 or $500 per device, and it only does credit card processing.
Yes.
What's much more capable is a smartphone that may not be the best as far as doing volumes of credit card transacting, swiping after swiping, but it carries inventory, it carries promotional coupons, it carries a lot of value along with it. And so if you have individuals who are, you know, doing one or two transactions every few minutes, and that's what their job is, yet all the value that comes with that existing hardware that's deployed out there already, a much more cost-effective solution for businesses. Because they're using hardware that people have all today and not a dedicated device that could cost $400 or $500.
Exactly, and you know, it's so you know, the cost of these devices are going to come down quite significantly as more and more people, and Android has a play in that. So now it's about modifying the software so that it becomes a usable piece of hardware ultimately, and it's that software layer. I mean, give me a dumb device; it doesn't matter what it is—an iPad, an iPhone. Any kind of device, a BlackBerry, and I should be able to add a software layer that facilitates this, so it gives it a good experience.
Yes.
But it's an interesting point that you brought, is that the Apple Store, which is famous for this, you know, oh, I'll take your credit card right here in the middle of the store, and it shocked everybody. Have you ever gone up and said, well, actually, no, I want to pay cash? And they say, okay, back of the room, you got to go to the furthest teller, you got to go and get somebody, and I mean, cash is frowned upon right there because it's a slow transaction, and you know, there's still that, I think, trust factor with the employees. You still have to go and see somebody who has a cash register to pay with cash. It's not convenient anymore.
Yeah, and take that one step further. What if they still pay with a check? I mean,
exactly.
That's even a worse scenario than cash.
Yeah, do you have a credit card with that, so they can write the credit card number on the back of the check in order to be able to facilitate this, so we can?
No, it doesn't. The imagery there doesn't work. An Apple Store with cash or check, the imagery just doesn't fit. But
they just send you out the front door. They say no. Like,
yeah, man, there's another provider over
exactly, if you want. Go buy a Dell if you want a cash, right? Like, you know. An interesting thing here is that carriers, like I look at carriers as maybe the only entities that can compete with the credit card companies on cash. Yeah. Maybe they don't want to, because it's a very cash intensive endeavor to compete with credit cards and offering that kind of, extending that kind of credit. But the carriers are ultimately the ones in their walled garden that own the customer that is holding on to this device.
Yep.
Have a lot to lose and a lot to gain by accepting payments that go right onto my bill at the end of the month. Unified billing. So, I mean, what do you think happens there? Because they're doing it already with software sales. I think the App Store disrupted that from Apple, but now they're looking at multiple ways of generating revenue right from the customer, bypassing everybody and getting it right on the bill. Do you think that is stiff competition for carriers or for credit card companies at some point?
I think it very well could be, but "could" is probably the most important word there, and it's the chicken and egg. You have to get mass market adoption on, first of all, users that are willing to put the payment capability into their phone to be able to make a payment, and then you got to get adoption with the merchants that are then willing to accept that as a form of payment. And that's a huge, huge endeavor. It's one of the things that's very underlooked. For most people, we do tend to think that, well, heck, all you got to do is have the carriers create a payment system. Magically, it's all just going to work. And the value that and I guess the time and efforts taken for the bank networks, which the banks used to own Visa, they used to own MasterCard. That's changed over the last a few years, where these are now independent companies that are publicly traded. But beforehand, they were bank consortiums. The value there that happened is the banks got together, agreed to these general rules and conditions, and every bank had skin in the game. So every bank was able to reach out to the community, give out plastic to all their consumers, and give out merchant accounts to all their businesses. And you created this great chicken and egg problem that was solved of acceptance and devices. Now, can the carriers do the same thing? And I think they can, number one, but I think it has to be market by market, niche by niche. To get a mass market capability on a very quick time frame will be the challenge. And then by that point in time, do we see the credit card brands adapting better into sponsoring some of these payment networks that carriers might be putting out there? I think that's probably a little more logical of an approach. You might find some large banks that get behind the carriers from an underwriting and transaction management perspective, and then ultimately, does that bring in the payment networks to get a piece of that program as well? I don't know, but it's a challenge, and one that I think is not easily solved by the carriers just saying, let's get together and do this.
Yeah, and if you've ever worked with a carrier, I mean, they have a process, and it's probably going to be too much. I wouldn't say that never, but it's going to be such an endeavor. They would probably put a cap on what you could spend at the beginning, so they're microtransactions or smaller transactions. But I think about who has access to the customer and who has access to remove cash, and who's hungry or a little bit greedy, who wants to add a little bit more to everything that they're doing. And I don't think that there's anybody in a better position right now, next to the credit card companies, than the carriers to look at this and say, you know what, there's a big opportunity for us to maybe not extend $10,000 lines of credit or credit card, but $200 to $500 chunks that you can add onto your bill, and have a cap. So basically, it's you have a $500 credit limit with on your bill, and allow minor transactions and NFC stuff, right? Coffees and gas and that kind of stuff, because there is an opportunity there to increase a little bit of revenue as a result of that, and take a little bit away from the carrier or from the credit card companies, I'd say. In that. Yeah,
and that's where I think you really hit a good point there, and that is finding those certain places and certain market niches where they can be very relevant and it makes sense to the consumer. And truly small microtransactions makes a heck of a lot of sense. And even when you're in airports and you're in stadiums, you're in confined areas, it's going to make a lot of sense in those areas. If you put a loyalty aspect to it, you might have a little bit of a home run thing going here, and that people will adapt to anything that has loyalty based against it. And so that does bring in the big retailers. Starbucks has proven that they've been very capable with their private label, gift card, prepaid card product. They'll put that on the mobile device pretty soon. They put loyalty against it. That's a very viable payment solution now. You can see the Walmarts and others may be following along. Now the problem there is, how many payment devices as you as a consumer do you want to carry? Do you want to have a Starbucks one, a Walmart one, and then a Target? Probably not, but you might have your top 4 or 5
right.
as purses within your cell phone that could work very effectively. And that's why I think we'll see more capability with mobile payment systems from carriers that will complement probably the plastic that's out there in people's wallets today. I don't think it replaces it, but it certainly could complement it and do probably a more effective job on those types of micro purchases, and where you have a little bit more of a one-to-one affinity or affiliation with that retailer.
Yeah, I think it's so astute, because I'm not going to carry 30 different transaction capabilities or cards. I don't today.
Yeah.
It's probably why I carry a credit card and a debit card, so I don't have to do that. And I don't think that it's an indication of whether I'm brand loyal or not, because I am to some and I'm not to others. But I don't have to be a card-carrying, brand loyal guy. I should be rewarded just because I walk in and I buy something there continuously or many times over. The interesting thing is we've just come to a point where you've got these guys like Starbucks, and up here it's Tim Hortons. It's a local. They're extending into the U.S., but it's a coffee shop and donut shop. It's like a Krispy Kreme, but much better. And it's named after a Canadian hockey player in the '60s. Tim Horton. And when you think about that, is that they've got their own cards. But the way that you add money to it is by walking into the store and either using your credit card or your debit card now, or jumping online using your credit card to prepay or fill up the card. And I think this is, to kind of close this loop, this is a great opportunity for carriers to just say, look, I want to add $20 to my Starbucks card, or $20 to my Tim Hortons card, or I want to send a $25 gift card for iTunes or whatever to somebody, and I want to do it all from my carrier billing, and then just be able to pay that one bill at the end of the month, just like a credit card. Throw on some interest, maybe not 29%, but somewhere a little bit affordable, and you've got a viable, seamless, frictionless opportunity to satisfy some customers and extend brands and do all that stuff.
I think you're right. I've always said that gift card and loyalty card, which in the U.S. market, that's a private label card. That's like the Starbucks card. That's where we're going to see a lot of capability within that mobile space. And if you're following the Durbin Amendment, as we call it here in the U.S., which is part of the Credit Card Act, but the Durbin Amendment was designed to bring the cost of debit, way down. We're still not sure how this will play out, totally. But if the way it was proposed by the Fed, which has the rights to be able to bring down, to set the rate, if you will, for debit, it would have been a 70 or 90%, depending upon what the makeup is, reduction in the cost to the merchant. Well, my thought there is what better than of a back-end payment system than that for the mobile device or for the gift, loyalty card. A proven payment network that's electronic, that's real-time, same-day transacting. That's the type of thing that even the carriers could get into, as far as aligning themselves with. And then if you have a very cost-efficient payment network like that, and you put a big loyalty program against it, that can make the large retailers extremely challenging for the small retailer to have to compete with. Absolutely. Because whether it's Walmart or Sam's Club, there's nothing you can't buy that you can get it anywhere else. I mean, it's your groceries, it's your gas, it's your office supplies, it's your gardening, and so you put big loyalty against that. It's like the frequent flyer programs back in the 70s and 80s, where that just created an addiction for travelers. It's not, I think, out of the realm for those types of the wireless and the mobile devices to link into a very cost-efficient debit network, assign loyalty, put it onto a smartphone, and you have a pretty incredible solution right there.
Yeah, and it's so powerful, and there's huge opportunity in there, because I think that's a place where the credit card companies do play, but this is just a better match for those kinds of transactions, for those kind of customers.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see. So, you think 3 to 5 years, in that realm, we're going to start to see the the printing of the dollars, the actual paper money, kind of not disappear, because I don't think that in my lifetime I'll see cash disappear. But I do think that what we'll start to see is, as a dollar bill gets retired, it doesn't get printed again, right? And we're probably seeing that now. The penny is obsolete. When does the nickel and quarter and dollar become obsolete? Because you can now just, with NFC, scan your phone. But Do you think that you think we're going to start to see that the beginning of this over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I guess I'm probably a little more conservative than most pundits out there in this area. I think that what we're going to see is we won't visibly see the reduction of cash being transacted. What we will see is a lot more mobile devices being in use. And that's what we'll visibly see. I think the reality is clearly cash and check will be trailing off. But I think that over the next 3 to 5 years, it's still really aggressive to think that we won't, that cash will be, more visibly not in use. I think instead we're still going to see a lot of people paying cash in lines. We're going to still see a lot of grandmas and grandpas writing checks in grocery stores, but we'll also start seeing a lot of mobile devices out there as well, where right now you're not seeing them very, very often. And we will start seeing them easily in the next 3 to 5 years. And I think in certain marketplaces and certain captive audiences, again, whether it's the the football stadium or whether it's the large corporate environment that has a couple campuses, or whether it's a small city block that's gotten together, we'll see, I think, really good pockets of mobile devices, both on the payment acceptance side and on the helping make payment side, happening in those very select market segments. And we'll get a lot of noise, a lot of visibility. And I think it will create the whole proliferation of mobile becoming a lot larger part of our commercial society.
Well, I think that's probably when you put in those terms, Greg. I think that you're bang on. Is that when it's convenient to use this technology, or when it's inconvenient to use a different type of processing, like in a stadium, and you're in the middle seat, in the middle row. This is something that a lot of people are trying to figure out how to monetize that guy right there. For not just in the premium seats, right, but in every seat in the stadium. I think that there's going to be these niche spots. I know that Starbucks is rolling out that, as you said, their payment cards, or their payment cards on a mobile device, and those are the instances where we're going to see this. And I think that just like debit, the proliferation of debit took a long time, but it gained steam, and now you don't think twice about going to a teller or a bank machine, or paying directly from your bank account, right from wherever you are in any restaurant or any retail establishment. So but it started with a little niche. It started with just those, having a virtual teller sitting on a corner where I can get some cash out on a Sunday afternoon. And
well, I think it has to be more than payment. I think talk about the guys in the middle seat. Why would this person ever want to use their mobile phone during a game as a form of payment? And this is where I think it has to be more than payment. It has to be the fact that they can use it to vote for who gets on the All-Star team, and that there's if they go out and text something, there's a prize that they can win, or a lottery that they can win. I think it's the information delivery capability on the smartphone that makes it such a great, fantastic solution. And it's always that it's the payment account that pays the way. So. The revenue stream for the business is the payment transaction. People are very willing to pay a fee to transact payments electronically. So there's your revenue model. But now, how do you get the fan in the seat to use it? I think what they do is you have to have marketing, loyalty, rewards, those types of things on those devices to motivate the consumer or the individual to adopt that as a form of payment. I think we'll start seeing that in those areas where you have a captive audience. And I think of the big retailers being a captive audience as well. I mean, they certainly have the power to do a lot of rewards and a lot of loyalty type programs to get the person to use that form of payment. And for a lot of those big retailers, it's about not accepting Visa and MasterCard because of what they feel the costs are, but instead putting that onto a lower cost debit network or their own carrier network. And how do you do that? It's got to be loyalty. It's got to be rewards. It's got to be a way to get the consumer to say, I will give up that good affiliation I have with my rewards-based credit card, and I'll give it up to go with my mobile phone that has a payment mechanism built into it if you give me loyalty and rewards back.
It all comes down to, and that's a change in behavior. That's you've got to shock people into changing their behavior in order to be able to do that. And it always comes down to what's in it for me. Ultimately. From the consumer standpoint, because they're happy with the status quo. So
well, that's a good point. That's a consumer standpoint. And I'm a big fan of the commercial market. And I think that it's the commercial market that can make mass market much more effective quicker. And so in the commercial market, it's about reducing costs. It's about increasing visibility. and about creating more of a cash management type of perspective, whether I can get paid faster or whether I can make payment more accurately and maximize my float. So in the commercial market, I think they can really influence mass market adoption, but I think the mobile solutions now have to reposition how they approach that marketplace. And it's much more, probably not as much about rewards and loyalty as it is about straight through processing, data integration, and making sure that the payment transaction is built into, whether it be the ERP or the business software solution, that the commercial or the corporate customer now is going to get value from as far as reducing costs.
Yeah. Well, it's such a fascinating thing because we're on the precipice here of what's, what I think is we'll look back on this in a number of years and think this was the beginning of this era of cashless transactions. Started, I'd say, in the 70s and D Hawk's era of vision of Visa and moving forward into what we are right now. So this isn't overnight. Been doing this for 40 or 50 years to get to this point, so that the infrastructure has the ability to switch over into this cashless environment or cardless environment under the smartphones. I think we've just been waiting for the right pieces of technology to be able to implement this. And certainly the efforts that have gone into it over the last 40 or 50 years have allowed us to consider this. Without all of that, without what the credit card companies have done and the infrastructure that's been built, we wouldn't be able to have this conversation, which is oftentimes lost. They're not the Luddites; they're the ones who built this, right? And I think that's sometimes lost in this whole piece, especially around the time it took them to get the credit cards to get in tune with online purchases. It took a long time for them to get around to this, but once they did, now it's common, and it took 10 years. It took less than 10 years for us to accept this, to put a credit card into a website. And I think that the evolution of that will be much faster when it comes to mobile, especially if it means everything that we've discussed, the speedier transactions, the cash in my hand a little bit faster, and you paying your daughter to babysit or your son to mow the lawn. So I only accept credit cards, Dad. I don't trust the cash is going to...
he wants his chargeback rights.
Exactly, that's right. And you want it because it guarantees the quality of the work, because you can contest it if it's not done appropriately.
There you go. Yeah.
Well, listen, Greg, I really appreciate this. This is a great primer on what's about to happen. Love to stay in touch and have this conversation quite regularly to see how things are moving along in this space. And certainly with the launch of your product, your mobile product coming up, I'd love to follow up with you on that as well. If you're game, if we haven't bored you to death over here. This
has been a lot of fun. It's my first use of Skype in this manner, and you're talking about a subject that's near and dear to me, and I'm probably as much as you really curious and wondering how this will play out in the mass market. And the thing that you had said before that kind of makes me ponder the whole evolution that we're in is, we've had a very capable smartphone for a long, long time called the BlackBerry.
Yes.
And I was a CrackBerry person and a BlackBerry person for a long, long time. And it's amazing to me that with the introduction of the iPhone, that for some reason we've had what feels like a 10-year leap into the future.
Yes.
On now the iPhone is a mobile payment device, and granted BlackBerries as well and everyone else as well, but they weren't considered that until the iPhone. So it's a cultural phenomenon that we're seeing that is driving a lot of new opportunities, especially in the payments and transaction-based world. And I think we ride the coattails of it for right now and see where it takes us. But I certainly think that the Android devices, the BlackBerry devices, the Windows 7 mobile devices are all extremely capable as well. And because of that proliferation of all these great operating systems that can be mobile. And by the way, mobile isn't, as I talked about before, it's not just the mobile device or phone. It's the tablet, the iPad, it's the laptop. And we tend to not think of laptop anymore as being mobile, but it's a mobile device.
It's so heavy, though. Yeah. I know how quickly we forget, but you're right. And mobile to me is not just these devices. It's the act of being somewhere and accepting a transaction regardless of the situation that I'm in. So whatever device, as you said, whatever device I've got in my hand, or whatever mechanism is at my, I don't care if it's smoke signals. Figure out a way to turn that into bits and bytes and ones and zeros and pay me what's due.
Yeah, mobile's a method. Mobile's not a device. It's about a method, and you know, everyone's mobile, and they have a lot of different devices that they can work within.
Yeah.
And so it's you know, that to me is the incredible aspect, and you know, it is quite fascinating that the iPhone has helped pave the way for us to think in this fashion and be a lot more receptive to this mentality. But I think it's going to be an incredible next 3 to 5 years.
Well, I mean, I sit the same kind of anticipation as you do on this, and you know, I think that I'm looking forward to seeing what happens here, just across the entire space. But you know, cash. I'd like to disrupt it. I'd like to have been alive during this period of time where we've disrupted cash, where we've had that monumental tide of events that have turned cash obsolete. And I can say to my grandkids, well, I was a kid, I used to carry paper money around, and they had all these mechanisms. They spent billions of dollars securing it so that I couldn't counterfeit it. And them looking at me like, oh, Grandpa, shut up with your paper money stories. It's fiction. You know?
Yeah, it was all a lie anyways.
Exactly. Just that's it. Well, Greg, look, I appreciate your time. You know, I really do. Really insightful, really enlightening in this space, and certainly I'm ecstatic that I got you on the show to talk about this. I got the right guy. Really do appreciate it. Thank you, Greg.
Well, thank you, Rob. I appreciate the opportunity.
So, Greg Hammermaster, who is from Sage, the president of Sage Payment Solutions. If you go to Sage Payment, www.sagepayments.com. There's information about the mobile product launch that's imminent, and all about you and all about your company. Anywhere else that you guys are involved in that you want to push?
No, for the most part, our website's the place to find us. We are in the marketplace, and we have a lot of partner channels and things like that. You'll find both Sage on the software business side and also in the payment side. So have a look out for us, and you'll see a nice integrated prepackaged payment solution with the business software out there in the marketplace.
That's great. Greg, thank you so much for being on Untether.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Really appreciate it. Enjoy the weather.
Okay. Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.